Today we are working on Lesson 29, multi-step problems using all operations, and we are going to use a knowledge of simplifying expressions that we already have, the order of operations, and properties of equality to calculate the solution of multi-step equations. Okay, so for our first one, I'm going to read the problem to you, and I want you to listen. The school librarian, Mr. Marker, knows the library has 1,400 books, but wants to reorganize how the books are displayed on the shelves. Mr. Marker needs to know how many fiction, nonfiction, and resource books are in the library. He knows the library has 4 times as many fiction books as resource books, and half as many nonfiction books as fiction books. If these are the only types of books in the library, how many of each type of book are in the library? Okay, so you can see I already started a tape diagram to show the total of 1,400 books. Then our problem says that he knows the library has 4 times as many fiction books as resource books. So here I have fiction, and I have 4 blocks. And here I have resource, and I have 1 box. Okay, so that's showing 4 times as many. Okay, so using just that information, what variable should we use throughout the problem? I think a good one would be to represent the resource books, because there are not as many of those as there are the other books. So we are going to represent resource book with an R, and fiction is also going to be represented by R. What's another way that we can write this? 4R. Okay. If we let R represent the number of resource books, then 4R represents the number of fiction books. Now, how about nonfiction? Nonfiction, the problem told us there were half as many nonfiction as there were fiction. So if there was half as many fiction, how many nonfiction boxes should I draw? 2. And each of those, because we're going to keep the number the same inside, each of those is also going to be an R. So how could we represent the nonfiction books? 2R. So now we want to write an equation that represents this. So here we're going to redo our big tape diagram. I have some space here, so I'm going to put this in here. This is the 1,400. Okay, and so if we have R is the resource, so that represents the resource books, and we have 4 of those, represent the fiction book, so we have 4R. I got that from right here. And then the last section represents nonfiction, and that's going to be a 2R. I got that from right here. So what equation could I write that would represent this tape diagram right here? The whole entire thing. Well, we can take each part that we wrote. We can take R plus 4R plus 2R. And we know what it equals because we were given the total right here, so it equals 1,400. The next step that we can do is we can add all of the R's together because they are the same variable. If you had different variables here, you would not be able to add them together. So since they are all R, we have 1R plus 4R plus 2R. What is that going to give me? 7R. And we still equal 1,400. Okay, So I'm going to rewrite that here. We had 7R equals 1400. Okay, so now we need to solve it. In order to find what R equals, we have to use the opposite operation. So 7R implies multiplication. What is the opposite operation of multiplication? It's division. So we're going to do 7 divided by 7R equals 1400 divided by 7. Because remember, what we do on one side, we have to do to the other side. Okay, so here we are left with just R. And then 1400 divided by 7. Well, we know 7 can go into 14 2 times. And then we have the 2 zeros. So R is equal to what? 200. So what does that mean? What does that 200 mean? It means there are 200 resource books. Sorry, that E didn't come out. If we know there are 200 resource books, how can we figure out what the other totals are? All right, so let's just put our, oops. So we're going to have fiction. We're going to have nonfiction. We are going to have resource. And we are going to have the total number of books. Okay? So we already know for our resource number, how many do we have? We can fill that in right away. Right? We have 200. And we know we have a total of 1400. So we want to figure out how many fiction and how many nonfiction. For fiction, remember we had 4R, and for nonfiction we had 2R. So what did we say R was? 200. So 4 times R is 800, because 8 times 2, I'm sorry, 4 times 2 is 8, and 2 times 2 is 4, so we're going to have 400. Okay, we're going to quick do one more example. Indian Ridge Middle School wanted to add a new school sport, so they surveyed the students to determine which sport is the most popular. Students were able to choose among soccer, football, lacrosse, or swimming. The same number of students chose lacrosse and swimming. The number of students who chose soccer was double the number of students who chose lacrosse. The number of students who chose football was triple the number of the students who chose swimming. If 434 students completed this survey, how many students chose each sport? Okay, so we know that initially the same number of students chose lacrosse and swimming. So that is going to be a 1 because we're going to start with our smallest number. And then it says soccer is double the number of students who chose lacrosse. So what is double what lacrosse is? Well, it's 1 times 2, which would make that 2. Football is triple the number of swimming, so that's going to make that 3. Okay? So we're going to add up these numbers to find our total for our equation. And we have 2 plus 3 is 5, plus 1 is 6, plus 1 is 7. So our total is 7 for our survey. So if we want to figure out if the total is 434 students, how are we going to find the other numbers? Well, we need to represent with a variable. So we can choose either of the letters for the sport that has 1. So you can do an L, you can do an S. I'm going to choose an S. Okay, so this is going to be S. This is going to be S. What's football going to be? 3S. And soccer? 2S. Okay, so now we're going to write an equation. 2S plus 3S plus S plus S equals 7. My bad. I'm going to take that back. Equals 434 because we want to figure out what S is. So we're going with our total. We can add these up because they are all the same letter. They're all the same variable. So again, we have 2S plus 3S is 5, plus 1 is 6, plus 1 is 7. So we have 7S equals 434. So now we need to divide both sides by 7. So S equals 62 because I'll show you long division just very quickly. 434 divided by 7. 7 can go into 43 6 times. 6 times 7 is 42. You subtract. You have 1. You bring down the 4. 7 goes into 14 2 times. You have 14. You subtract. You have 0. Okay. All right. Now we still want to figure out how many kids voted for soccer, football, lacrosse, and swimming. Well, lacrosse and swimming are going to be easy because we already figured out what S is. So we have 62 who wanted swimming and 62 who voted for lacrosse. Now to find soccer and football, you are going to multiply each of those by the coefficient and plug 62 in for S. So for soccer, it's going to be 62 times 2. And 62 times 2. 2 times 2 is 4. 2 times 6 is 12. So we have 124. Okay, and then for football, same idea. We have 62, but this time we're multiplying 3. 3 times 2 is 6. 3 times 6 is 18. So we have 186. To check your answer, you could add 124 plus 186 plus 62 plus 62, and it should equal 434.